So good morning. We're going to be doing communication skills for health and social care today. Now on this we have 3 learning outcomes. We've got learning outcome 1, which is know how health and social care organisations communicate. Then you've got learning outcome 2, be able to interact orally with individuals in a health and social care setting. And learning outcome 3, be able to communicate information in writing. We're actually just going to do learning outcome 1 today, and there's a fair amount of questions in here. So for the past section, you got 1.1, outline the principles of effective communication. 1.2, describe communication models, methods and systems used in health and social care settings. 1.3, explain the benefits of both formal and informal communication systems. 1.4, explain how technology is used for different types of communication. Then we go on to the merit question, which is 1M1. We're going to, in one of, I think it's in 1.3 or 1.4, we actually look at some barriers to communication. In the merit section, we're just going to look at what solutions you've got for those barriers, how you can fix those. And then 1D1, the distinction is evaluate how different uses of technology can enhance or detract from good communication in health and social care. So they sort of really like follow one from each other, all of these questions here. So the aim of today's unit is to help you to develop knowledge and understanding of the communication that you actually use in health and social care, and it'll help you to develop your own personal communication skills. It'll make you more aware of what you do on a daily basis, automatically anyway, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I actually do these things. I communicate non-verbally a lot, or I do use a lot of gestures. So it does pinpoint things for you. So before we start, we're just going to talk about the principles of effective communication. Now this is part of 1.1. So what we're going to talk about for principles of communication, it just helps you to know what sort of context health and social care workers will work in and how they communicate. So communication is completely about making contact with others, and it's also about being understood. So when you're communicating with other people, you're actually sending a message and you're receiving a message. So when you're talking to someone, you're passing your message on, and when they're talking back to you, you're listening and you're receiving their message. So it's just back and forth. And so that's how we all communicate. We either receive messages or we send messages, verbally, text, email, in any way. So we're going to look at the models of communication on here. So when we talk about principles of effective communication, we talk about things like to make sure that you're clear, you're concise, that you've got clarity, and that what you're talking about is actually being passed on in a clear and simple way, so that you're giving a message that is easy to understand and that somebody can actually formulate an answer back to you in an easy way. You probably already do that when you're at work or with your children or family members or different people. You probably already adapt the way you talk to them. Because if you were to go into school, you're speaking to a teacher, you're going to speak in a different way. But if you're speaking to a child, you're probably going to use simpler language, aren't you? And you're going to make sure that you're not using too many big words. So it's all about adapting it and making the message clear. So here, models of communication, we're going to look at the business communication model. So this is just a representation of how we communicate. So the sender will be the person who's talking. They'll formulate a message. They'll send it to the person who's getting the message. So for example, this will be Julia. Julia's making a message and she's sending it to Nancy on here. Yes. So it goes from there to there. And now Nancy's received that message. So she's thinking, what am I meant to say back now? What is Julia asking me? So she thinks of some feedback and she thinks of an answer. Right, yeah, this is what Julia asked me. Here's my answer. And then she becomes the sender and she starts the process again. So she writes her feedback down, writes her message down, and then she'll go back and become the sender and she'll be sending the message and Julia will be the receiver. So it just goes in a circle. So when we're looking at here, I've got a little table here that I want to go through. So the definition is the method of presenting communication by a figure or a visual method. The nature is the way you actually present it. How are you actually doing it? Media, when we're looking at this, is a communication model, or the pictures that you use or the symbols that you use. Your understanding ability, so you've got to make sure that whoever you're talking to can actually understand what you're saying, so that it's easy, it's comprehensible, that the presentation is simple. So if you're talking to a doctor who has a lot of knowledge, then you might obviously use medical terminology. But if you're coming to me and I'm a patient of yours and I don't have that much knowledge about medications or procedures, you might want to dumb it down for me or make it simpler for me so that I can actually understand. Got to see how complex is it. Are you going to make it really detailed? Are you going to give the information in a short way? How long is it going to take you to do? And how effective is it? So what sort of, has the message actually been understood or not? And then we're going to look at some of these models here. We've got Aristotle's model, Laswell, Warren Weaver, Scrum, Riley, Berlow, and the contemporary model. Now, these models are quite similar. They're all about how you communicate with others, and you'll notice that some of them can be used in different situations depending on what the situation is. So Aristotle was an old Greek philosopher, very early days, around about the Caesar times. Now, Aristotle actually focused on 5 elements, and he's focused on speech and the speaker. So he thought that the speaker, speech, the occasion, the audience, and the effect is what we're splitting our communication into. And that the speaker has the most important role, but he or she is the only person that's active, and that they're just going to be delivering a speech to its audience. The audience, the people who are getting the message, are just passive. They're just there. They're not interacting. All they're doing is they're being influenced by speech. So according to Aristotle, this model is just a one-way process, one way from a speaker to a receiver. So this type of model could actually be really good for if you're in a conference, or you might have seen those TED Talks, or even when Steve Jobs is getting the new Apple iPhone out, and he's up on a big stage and he's telling you all the benefits of this wonderful iPhone that he's created, and so on, saying it does this, it's got great camera and all that. And it's just his point is to be the speaker. He's there giving you his speech, and he's trying to influence you to go and buy it. So this is a great example for somebody who's up on a stage or in a conference, a politician, a trainer, and so on. Then we've got Laswell's model. Now, Laswell also has 5 components in here. You've got a communicator, you've got the message, you've got the medium, you've got the receiver, and you've got the effect. Now, it says that the person who is communicating, who's talking, is the communicator. The message is what they're actually saying. The channel is how they're actually saying it. Are they doing it through verbally? Are they doing it through email? Are they doing it through an advert? Who is receiving it, and what is the effect that they're having? Are they actually getting the message over to that audience? Are they getting them to go and buy certain things, or to go and clean up the environment? What message have they said, and what effect has it made? So that is what Laswell's model is about. Right, just one moment there. Right, and then we got Warren Weaver's model, or we can call it the linear model of communication as well. Now, this is quite similar to what we've just looked at, but this model, it deals with things like information, transmitter, noise, channel. So the separate thing that this has got in it is it's got a noise in the middle. So, for example, if I wanted to send a message to Julia, if I picked up a phone and I phoned where she worked, and somebody else answered the phone instead of her, that person or that interruption would be the noise. It's what is stopping me from getting my message straight across. So that person would then go and call Julia and say, you've got a phone call from Russia, come and talk. So that's that interruption. Sometimes when we're on Join Me, you might have issues where you've got, you can't hear me sometimes, or your connection will be bad. That fuzz that you have, that issue, that interruption that you get, we also call that noise. So anything that disrupts your message from getting across. Then we've got Berlow's model, and we're almost done. It's just a few more slides on this. And now Berlow's model actually stands for something called SMCR. So S is for source, M is for message, C is for channel, and R is for receiver. So the source is a person or a company or a group of people. The message is the information that they're sending through. The channel is how they're doing it. Are they doing it through newspaper, letter, email, phone? And the receiver is the person who actually receives the message. Then we have Scrums Model. And I'm sorry, I know there's a bit of an interruption in the background. I'm not sure why that is, but I think it's a bit of noise. So we've got a Scrums Model. So Scrum is saying that information is completely useless unless it's put into careful words and conveyed to others in a way that they can understand. So they talk about encoding, interpreting, and decoding. So encoding is when you put the message together. Interpreting is when you actually try and figure out what it means. And decoding is you actually just, feedbacking, understanding what it actually is. So the sender, the source, the person who's sending the information, will put some information together. They'll send a message to the person they want to do it. They'll look at the message, they'll decode it, they'll read it, they'll look at it, they'll try and interpret what it's actually saying. Then they'll put down their own, think of a message themselves or think of a reply and send that down. So it's just in a loop, in a cycle again that it goes backwards and forwards. Then we have Riley's model. Now, Riley's model shows that the communicator has a larger part in what is happening in the message. So it's also showing that this can be like in a big social structure as well, and that the receiver is also quite an important part of the message because they're going to get the message and they're going to decode it and they're going to think about what it is and they're going to go backwards and forwards in a two-way process. So he's saying that there's information being put together by the communicator. So within a larger social group, for example, if you're working together and you're doing teamwork within a class environment, you'll have 2 or 3 people working together, 2 or 3 different groups. You'll put down your thoughts and ideas and you'll put a message down and you'll pass it forward to the other group that's working together. And then they'll do the same thing. So your messages and your communication will just be going backwards and forwards. But rather than just being one person to one person, you're actually being large groups of communicators. You're having a larger social structure on this part. And then the last one on this is the contemporary model. Now this is the most modern day one. It's the most up-to-date one that we've got. Pretty similar to all the others that we've seen. You've got the communicator. They encode a message to put it down, to think of what they want to do. So I'm thinking, what do I need to say? I'll make a note of it. I'll put the message down, then I'll send it. Now, how am I going to send it? Am I going to send it by text message? Am I going to send it on email? Am I going to phone someone? So I've chosen, I decided to send it as an email. So I'm the communicator. I've thought of what I want to write. I've put it down. I've decided to send it as an email. One of you has received it, or like the other day when I sent you all these codes through email saying that we're going to be doing meetings today. So you've received that message. Then you're going to look at that message. You're going to decode it, understand it, and then you're going to say, yes, okay, I understand. So either you'll send me verbal feedback or you'll just give me feedback by attending the lessons, because that's showing me that you got the message that I sent you. Then it just goes backwards and forwards again in that same aspect. So That was just some models of communication. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to go over? Or anything you'd like to ask?
No. Oh my.
Okay, fantastic. So 1.2. Now, we're going to look at different communication models. So describe communication models and systems used in health and social care organizations. Now, as we've just been looking at, we know that communication is a two-way process where one person will listen, they'll try and understand, and then they'll formulate their answer and they'll talk back. They'll communicate with you. So communication is really important that you actually do active listening. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, is that communication isn't just you talking 100% of the time. It's you talking 50% and it's you listening 50%. So having a good listening skill is really vital, especially for you when you're working in healthcare, because you need to be able to listen to what your patients and your colleagues are telling you and understand what message they're giving you and actually react in accordance to what you've been told. So having good communication skills is vital for anywhere, but especially within healthcare. Now, we've got somebody called Abraham Maslow, and he's got lots of theories about communication, about what are basic needs and so on. Now, some of these theories are, we've got a humanistic theory, we've got cognitive, social, behavioral, and psychoanalytic theories as well. So the humanistic theory, it just explains that every individual who needs care needs to have loving members within the society and they have a good potential and that they need to have a good self-esteem, dignity and honor so that they can actually flourish. Cognitive theory is something that can be happening suddenly. It's where it's related to your brain and your intelligence. So it also deals with you coding and information. So putting down information, processing it, and actually being able to respond in particular. Social theory is just a study of social facts, and it deals with sort of discussions, whatever happened on a social basis. Behavioral theory deals with the behavior of how an individual is and how capable they are of dealing with certain things, and obviously what their own mental status is. And then psychoanalytical theory, it just deals with what sort of stress, emotion, what sort of behaviors you have as a person in that. So within health and social care, again, like I said, it's important that you're aware of who you're talking to, speak to your patients, get a general sense of how they are, what their understanding are, and again, adapt the way you actually speak to them and how you can actually show your communication is happening so they can understand you in a good way. So that was 1.2. Good morning, we just had another viewer join us. Can I take your name, please? So I've got Nancy, I've got Julia, and I've got somebody else.
It's Placidia.
Oh, hi Placidia, how are you?
Fine.
Fantastic, thank you for coming. We've gone through 1.1 and 1.2.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go on to 1.3 now.
Okay.
So 1.3 is about the benefits. So we're going to explain the benefits of both informal and formal communications. Now, we actually communicate formally and informally on a daily basis. So we might speak, we might do verbal communication, we might listen, we might have non-verbal communication, like, you know, we might pat somebody on the shoulder to show it's okay, don't be upset, or give them eye contact or smile or nod. Sometimes if we're feeling uncomfortable or just really relaxed, you might sit there and fold your arms. So we do communicate a lot. Now, even though you guys can't see me at the moment, every single time I'm talking to you, I'm moving my hands about, gesturing and so on. And it's a habit that I've gone into. So even though I know that you can't physically see what I'm doing, it's something that I do without even realizing it. And I think we all have the same sort of traits where we do things without even realizing we're actually doing them. Now, being a care worker or being within health and social care, it's your job to make sure that you're getting information and that you're giving information to support someone emotionally or to carry out assessments of needs or care needs and so on a daily basis. So communication is an extremely big part of what you do at work. So when we go into verbal communication, this is just when we're talking to each other. And when you're within care, you've got a range of verbal communication. So you're responding to questions, you're finding out about some issues or problems or what somebody might need. You might be contributing to team meetings. You might even need to break bad news or unfortunately be in a situation where you're not giving the news. You might need to support others and you might need to deal with problems and complaints. So we talked about communication cycles, about how you put down messages and how you talk to others in a way that they can understand you. So this is vital. It's very important that you're communicating in a way that your patients can actually understand you and your colleagues can understand you. So adapting what you're talking about and saying is a skill that you'll probably already have without even thinking about it. Then we've got non-verbal communication. So these are things like what we just call body language. So it can be what you physically do, so meeting someone's eyes or smiling at them, or smirking or frowning, any of those things. But it can also be the way you look. So it can be your appearance. So if you're walking in, you've got a very nice pressed uniform on, you're looking clean and tidy, you're smelling nice, you've got nice body spray on, but not too much of it on. Your hair is nice and neat. You're going to instill a confidence in your patients, in the people and their family members. But if you're walking in and you've got clothing that has got food stains on it, or the buttons are popping open, or there's things that aren't, it's going to last an image. Now, a few months ago, I took my eldest son to get his, unfortunately, we had to go and get his appendix removed. And we saw a number of surgeons and doctors. And I remember the head surgeon walking in, and he had such a high position. We'd been waiting around for him for so long, and he walks in, his buttons are popping open, and he's got food stains all over his shirt. And I was like, you're going to operate on my son, seriously. Mentally, that's the first part that came into my head. It didn't give me the confidence to see him in that type of manner. So it's really important. And I know very well that your appearance doesn't always indicate how capable you are of your job. But unfortunately, it's something that goes hand in hand with the way you need to work, especially when you're meeting so many people that might be worried and upset and going through a hard time. So your physical appearance is a big thing as well. So we've got this table here that will show you what the forms of non-verbal communication are. So you've got facial expression, so when you're smiling or frowning or smirking, any of those things. Got touch or contact, where you can physically touch someone or hold someone's hand, put your hand on the shoulder or pat them on the back. Gestures, so a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or, you know, if you're angry, you're shaking your fist, or if you're shrugging, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. You know, proximity, about how physically close you are to someone. So sometimes being physically close to someone can be reassuring, but sometimes it can make other people feel uncomfortable and threatened because you might not want to be someone in your own personal space. So if you don't have a trusting relationship, or if you're not performing any duties that don't mean you have to be close to someone, then don't go into their space, give them their personal space. Eye contact is another form of non-verbal communication. It's where you can actually show someone if you're nervous or shy, if you're not trusting them, or if you've got aggression towards them, or you're interested in them, or you're attracted to them. So it can show a lot of different things. Then sometimes we have things like signs, symbols, and objects of reference. Now these are just simple things on here. So if you've walked around in any surgery or when you're at work and you've looked at the walls, there's signs and symbols all over the place, aren't there? There's do not enter, no smoking, wet floor, all of those things. It just conveys information without actually having to physically speak, or someone has to stand there and say, this room says do not enter, don't come into it. You'll automatically know what those signs are. And then objects of reference are just things that somebody holds true to themselves. So there's things like toys or photographs or something that somebody might really treasure, and they can be talking points for you as well. So if somebody's wearing a necklace that looks antique, you can say to them, oh, that's a beautiful necklace, and then you can strike a conversation with them and get to know what they're about, and it gives a good conversation opener. Sometimes for people that might have learning disabilities, they might become quite attached to a piece of clothing or particular style of t-shirt, or have a toy or something that they like having with them, and it's important to know that they like these things, or it might be an issue if you try and take something away from this person. So it's good to be able to understand. Then we've got technological aids. So these are things like communicating systems. So you've got your text messages, your emails, and so on. With that, you've got websites like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So all of these are technological aids that you can actually use to communicate with other people. And I know a lot of hospitals, they've got apps out now where you can book appointment systems or websites and things. Where I know my local doctor surgery, they've got a website where you can go and log on and put your prescription requests in. So there's a lot of advancements that have happened that you physically having to phone or go in to do it now. Then you've got human aids. So these are people that help some others. So these people are people like interpreters. So where if you might speak English, and you might speak, because I speak Punjabi and Urdu as well, so I might have a patient that doesn't speak English, so I can interpret for them, or you can have somebody coming in to communicate for you, and you're all going to be aware of this. You've got translators who can translate one language to another. People who come in and sign for you, so they can do like British Sign Language if you use in the UK, or Macdon, which is used in other countries. And we're almost to the end of this section. So other forms of communication. So people that might have visual impairments, they might be reading documents that are in Braille, where they can feel by touching the indentations, the little dots on that. And then there's other impairments as well, like hearing impairments or learning disabilities, where sometimes somebody might need to lip read you so that they can actually understand what you're saying. So these are just some signs and some symbols that you'll probably already have seen a million times in and around in your workplace. So is everyone okay with that section? Do you want to go over anything?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. So 1.4 is explain how technology is used for different types of communication. So we've just talked a little bit about technological aids, but we're going to talk about how they're actually used for communication now. So we've got lots of communicators and hearing aids and video phones that actually help people who may have a disability or an impairment to actually communicate with others in a more comfortable way. So lots of people who are not have any issues with disabilities or impairments actually use technology in any way. So more or less everybody is using technology in some form or the other. So you're either phoning or you're messaging or you're emailing, so you're communicating. I mean, we've got family group chats which were around a few years ago. We've got this course, we've got a group chat where we can put messages out, which I've done earlier this morning. And I've had some people reply to it. So, you know, we've got so many different aids that we can actually use. We've got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so many that I'm not even aware of as well, because I'm not up to date with any of these things. So there's a lot of technology that we can actually use to communicate now with people on an official basis who may have a learning disability. You might have a hearing aids, or you might have video computer systems where they can type in certain symbols or press certain buttons and it'll say sentences for them. So there's many, many, many things that we can use to communicate. Now, with communication comes barriers. So we get certain barriers to communication on here. Now, there are barriers like jargon, slang, and acronyms. So if I break down a particular word, rather than saying health and social care, if I say HSC, only those people who know that HSC stands for health and social care would understand it. But somebody else might be wondering what on earth is HSC. You might have things like emotional distress, dialect, health problems, language differences, environmental problems, and cultural problems, disabilities, and sensory deprivation. Has anyone come across any sort of barriers to communication to do with any of these points that I talked about? Sorry, did you say something?
Yes.
Yeah. So can you give me an example of something that might have happened that you've had a barrier to communication?
The one of disability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got one of my residents I look after. She can't talk, so it's a barrier when you want to communicate with her.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she's got a communication tablet.
Yes.
Where she can, point what she wants, if she's in a pain, she can, point at it, and then you know that she's in a pain. But
Exactly.
It's actually a barrier to communication when.
It is, yes. So you've got that barrier where she's unable to speak, and then you've got the solution, which is a communication tablet. So it's all in one. So if she was to lose her tablet, or if the power ran out of it, then she'd be struggling, wouldn't she? So yeah, that is a barrier there, 100%. And then barriers, again, if you're at work on a normal basis, is language barriers, where you might not have the same language as someone. Somebody might come in and be speaking Bengali and you don't speak Bengali. How do you communicate? They might not understand a single word of English. So you have to wait for interpreters or somebody who speaks the same language. Environmental problems as well. That is a big issue, is if you're trying to get information from someone or trying to treat someone and there's a noisy background, or there's lights flickering, or it's dark. So there's so many different barriers that are there. So because we've got such a multicultural mix within our country, there will be some type of barrier that comes apart on a daily basis from what we're doing. So language, cultural, dialect. Now, I know a lot of people will find it hard to understand certain dialects and be like, excuse me, what are you saying? Excuse me, excuse me. And it can get quite frustrating for you when you're saying the same thing over and over again. So, because of a thick accent or a thick dialect. Then you've got distress or emotional difficulties, where somebody's just really upset and they might not be in a place where they really even want to be listening to someone, or if they've had bad news and so on. So they're not going to be in that same mental state that they might be on a normal day. Again, jargon and slang, we've talked about that. If you were saying HIV and somebody doesn't understand what HIV is, it's human immunodeficiency virus, then try and stick to what you know that they'll know. So if you're speaking to a colleague, an expert, then use the big term, use the jargon or the acronym. But if you're not, try and keep it straight and simple. Health issues, again, if someone is not feeling well and they just don't want to talk, they're not in the mood. Environmental problems we've already talked about. And that's it. So those are some issues that you might come across and barriers that you might come across on a daily basis. Now, for 1M1, we're actually going to look at solutions to the barriers of effective communication. And these solutions are quite simple, to be honest, and I think that are done on a normal basis anyway. So it's things like just making sure that you're making changes to the environment, looking at the way you're actually approaching the other person using electronic aids. So adapt the environment. So if you can change light bulbs, get them changed to brighter light and get it done. Soundproofing rooms, or even actually going into a separate area or creating a quiet area that you can go and let somebody have a bit of peace and talk to them. You'll probably have seen posters and signs up in different languages, so putting up multilingual posters and signs so that a lot of different people can understand. Having induction loops like for a hearing aid put in on that. Having translators within your workplace readily available, or even having, at the moment, because we're such a multicultural, diverse society, most likely there will be somebody at work who might be able to help understand and translate for you. So you may be just swapping over rotation and having somebody who speaks the same language going onto that patient instead that doesn't speak the same language as you, just to make them feel more comfortable. So make sure that you're seeing clearly as well when you're communicating with someone, especially if you don't know, they might need to lip read you or they might be hearing impaired and they need to see your mouth when you're talking. Try and minimize background noise and then use your facial expressions, use your gestures to communicate. So talking isn't always necessary. Sometimes something can be done with a nod or a thumbs up or, a reassuring look. And then again, going on to the same things again, just you need to understand what the person's language needs are, what preferences they have, and just work in contact with that. Either get another staff member to come and help them if they have the same language skills, or try and get a family member to communicate for you, an interpret for you, or an interpreter or a signer. Now, pace is very important. Now, when we're talking, it's really important to make sure that you're setting your pace in a way. So for pace, I mean, is that you're not talking too fast or, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Or what's happening over here? We're not going overly fast or we're not going, right, so today I'm going to help you. Or we're not going too slow and sounding monotone. So you need to make sure that you speak clearly but slowly, and then also repeat what you're saying. And if you find that that person's not understanding what you're saying, rephrase it, use different words. So there's lots of different strategies. So if somebody keeps saying to you, I can't understand you, or you can't understand them, just ask them to slow down a little bit and ask them to be a bit more clear. So it'll really help people who've got thick dialects or accents, and also for people who may have a hearing or a visual impairment, or even somebody who's got a learning disability and can get really confused and upset when someone's in their face constantly speaking and they're not having time to understand. Within pace as well, when you're giving somebody a message or you're asking them a question, now I know it's natural for you to want an answer straight away, so if a couple of seconds of silence goes by, then you start asking more questions, don't you? It's important that you let that person think and understand, especially if they have a learning disability. It can take a little longer for them to embed what information you've done, to decode it and then actually formulate an answer. So give them a minute or so and let them have that quiet time where they're just thinking about how to answer you. Then again, electronic devices that we can use, have an induction loop, have a communication device, iPads, laptops. There's so many things that are available that you can actually communicate from. So in total, to overcome barriers for communication, try and reduce any outside noise, speak clearly and slowly, use interpreters, provide an induction loop, get improved lighting, adapt to the person's needs. So speak slowly, speak fastly, talk in the way that they understand. Display clear signs, and the most important is listen carefully to what they're actually trying to say to you. So we've looked at the barriers, and now we've looked at how we can fix some barriers. Has anybody got any questions for here?
No.
Okie dokes. And then last one, really simple, just this. So for 1v1, you're going to evaluate how different uses of technology can enhance or detract from good communication in health and social care. So you're going to see how it can do good things for you and how it can take away from you, how it does bad things as well. So on this section, you're just going to talk about the different types of technology, like social media. We've got emails, we've got websites, web pages. Sometimes we have webinars, presentations. You know, we've got PowerPoint, Prezi, all of these are presentation software. So in a nutshell, all you're going to do is talk about the different types of technology that are done now. Now, the best example I can see is, and I might have spoken to some of you about this earlier as well, is now that we've got this COVID system that's going on at the moment, unfortunately, it's not that safe for you to be going out and about, and for, especially for doctors where they're seeing so many different people a day. So my GP has got a system, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the same other GPs have got the same system. I'll fold them up, I'll be given a phone consultation, and then they'll talk to me through if there's something I need to show them, if there's a rash or a virus or something that they need to physically see. Then they'll connect via like an app, sort of like FaceTime, and then they'll just look through at what the issue is. Now, the fantastic part of that is I'm getting my appointment done in the pleasure of in the comfort of my own home. I'm able to communicate with them in my own time. They're able to set a certain time up where they don't have to be in the danger of contracting any viruses from being in contact with so many people. They're staying safe, I'm staying safe. And we're still able to have the appointment go through, and the medication that anyone needs, it can be given. But again, there's bad sides to this as well. So that's all the good, but the bad side is that personalization has finished. Sometimes you physically can't tell what you're looking at through a video, so you might not be diagnosing in the way that it is. And again, what if somebody's got a issue with the softwares and knowing how to use things? And then just to get medication, I could be showing somebody else. How do they know that I'm actually showing a spot on my body or somebody else's just to get medication? So you don't really know who you're actually looking at. So there are plus points to it, and there are negative points to it as well. So that was learning outcome 1 on here.